Hey everyone. So, welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. And this time we are going live, like officially live with it. And I'm so excited to have Barbara with us today. And Barbara, I don't have your bio. So, why don't you just share a little bit with us about just who you are, what you do, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, it's my fault, everyone. I keep promising to send it to her and then I don't because, newborn life. So, so my name is Barbara and I am a midwife from Ontario, Canada. I was a licensed midwife for 15 years and then gave up my license in order to work outside of the system. I don't really believe in a lot of the sort of big pharma backed philosophies and policies that midwives have to adhere to. And I ended up starting a business in online coaching, relationship coaching, which is really, it seems like not related, but obviously it's related to birth because in order to have a healthy family, you have to have a healthy relationship, etc. Healthy sex life to have a healthy conception. Like it's all connected. So I did that for about 8 years. And I was in my early mid 40s when I wanted, well, I've always wanted a second round of children. I have two older children. They're in their mid to late 20s. And in my 40s, decided to try to conceive again, which I did, in case you didn't notice, with some help from modern science. And I now don't do my coaching business anymore. It's just too much with my life and my lifestyle. So I am currently just helping people with their health and wellness. And I am helping. I how do I say? I'm like a business partner with a wellness company, and that's what I do now. So there, we'll leave it there. I mean, there's lots more to me than that little bio, but we'll leave that there for now.
I love that. Well, thank you, Barbara. I'm excited to have you. One, because y'all, this is our second time doing this. Okay. We did it the first time and the audio was just terrible. But we had so many great, like Barbara had so many great, points and aspects just around not just birth, but just really understanding like having your rights and being able to vocalize your rights and why it's so important to make sure that speak your truth and you don't allow other people to dictate like your decisions. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And, I know that if you all don't follow Barbara on social media, you need to, especially on Instagram. She is raw, she's authentic, and she is the queen of controversy. So she will get you. It's literally like I literally read all her comments and I'm like, dang, Barbara, like they said that? Like, oh my gosh. So we're gonna get into it because, a lot of our audience as well, not just from just being on the holistic sister circle, like, yes, we do have a lot of people who are focusing on health and wellness, but we also have a lot of people who are also business owners and practitioners, and they're really trying to figure out how can they garner attention online. So we'll talk a lot about that too, because Barbara has it, like she has it, and I'm learning from her as well. So yeah, we're super excited. So as we start, I would love to know from you just first of all, with your birthing experience, like Isaac is not even a year old. He was just born. And through that entire process, Barbara has literally been documenting her journey. So, Barbara, I would love for you just to share one, why did you decide to document your birth journey with Isaac?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, it's very intimate and it is very revealing and like vulnerable because it's such a, like, really, it's such an intimate thing. I mean, I haven't posted my birth on Instagram. Some people do. I don't think I will. That's just a line I personally don't want to cross, but definitely my process, my thought process. I changed my mind a few times. Like I felt really strongly about one thing and posted it on Instagram. Right. And then I changed my mind about it. So the example is I wanted care outside of the system. So I didn't want a midwife in the system. I didn't want all the fear mongering and all the, because I'm in my late 40s. So the whole, you're because of your age, like every sentence would start with because of your age and you're high risk, this, that. And I was like, how am I high risk? Like
Yeah.
just because of my literal number on my age doesn't convince me enough to be high risk. So I wanted to birth outside of the system. That's what we call it in the birth circles. With a practitioner who was not beholden to their license. And so at around 25 weeks pregnancy, now let me just interject with this caveat. I am myself a midwife, right? I know how to navigate the system. I know what tests I want. I know what, I know the research, right? So I'm really confident in pregnancy and birth already as a practitioner, never mind as a mom, being an experienced mom. So not everybody has that confidence, right? That I kind of leaned on. So at 25 weeks, I was experiencing a really weird rash I actually traveled to Florida. I never told you this. I traveled to Florida. I live in Canada. And I think I got sand flea bites or something on my feet. And they're just annoying, whatever. They were itchy. Life went on. Well, it became systemic and I had welts all over my body for 2 months straight. I'm just going to put them on the boob. Every night I would have a flare and I wouldn't be able to sleep. And the flare would consist of me scratching and being itchy, and half the time being in the bathtub, so uncomfortable, like crying and begging to God that it would stop. And no one could diagnose it. During the
Oh
day,
my
I
gosh.
know it was horrible. No one could diagnose, like we still don't know what it was to this day. It was not pregnancy related, nothing. But the whole point of this story is at 25 weeks, being outside of the system, not having access to medical care through my midwife or obstetrician in terms of my pregnancy made it really, really difficult to navigate and how to navigate the system. And it was difficult for me. So I can't even imagine someone who is not used to the system and not used to knowing what they want. So I ended up in a merge because there was no other access for me to access. I really wanted to have a consultation with an obstetrician to see if there was anything immune or pregnancy related. Anyway, long story short, that experience was shitty. Like I just didn't get good care in the hospital. And I was like, you know what? Even though this is not pregnancy related, this affected me in accessing good care because I did not have a midwife in the system. And for those of you in the US, I think probably most of you are in the USA. I'm in Canada, and here in Ontario, Canada, midwives are part of the healthcare system. So they're just part of the obstetric option for your pregnancy. So at 25 weeks, because I had that experience and because I realized that having access to the medical system is a good thing. It's like if you want it, it's a good thing, right? If you need it, then I decided, okay, I was going to call a friend of mine and ask her if she would be my midwife. And she said yes. And the rest is history. So I ended up being really strong about not wanting to birth inside the system and changing my mind. And I documented all of that on my page because as women, we are seen as like crazy or cuckoo or like, oh, we always change our mind or whatever. And no, we are human beings. We are allowed to have what we desire in the moment. And if we change our mind, we change our mind. We have that right. So that's my story. I'll leave that there for now, and you can ask me other stuff.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you say that too, because I think, and a lot of times, and I'm sure you experience this as well, just in your coaching business, but a lot of times you have coaches or you have doctors or just people of authority and experts in what it is that they do, and they have this one belief or this one way of doing things, and you feel like you're pigeonholed in this one way, especially when you don't feel or believe that that's the best route for you. And acknowledging, like you just acknowledging, like it's okay to change your mind. I think that literally gives so many people just an opportunity to say, okay, like even if I thought this was the right decision today, I don't feel guilty if I don't feel like it's not the right decision in 6 hours from now or tomorrow.
Totally.
Because, perfection is a big deal. And it's like, oh my gosh, I told this person I told this person that this was what I was going to do. And now I'm not doing it. And now I feel like a failure. And now you have all these things like emotions going on in your head. And the other person only cares about their own life. Oh, you're the one with the emotional turmoil. And I appreciate you just sharing and allowing us to now know, like, okay, it doesn't matter what you're going through at that moment, but you're like, it's okay to change your mind. Like, that's so powerful, just right there. So, can you just share? Now we know a little bit more about the birthing journey and obviously your experience as a midwife. Like, that's why you really are able to bring that into light when you share, your mission and your values and the things that you enjoy and why you stand so heavily on these things. Now, for those who are maybe they're a little bit more seasons as well and they want to have more children, or maybe they're, younger and they're looking to go that route too. Can you share just a little bit about your experience when it came to not just documenting your journey at this point, but now deciding that you're going to take what you've learned into account and now share it with others? Like, how were you able to say, you know, at this point, I wanted to do this. Now I'm changing everything. And how were you how did you give yourself that opportunity to just kind of let things mellow out, but then also share it in a way where you didn't really care about the feedback?
Yeah. So as I shared in our previous interview, I do care and I'm human and it's really hard to see like trolls come in and like be mean. And I have the skills and life experience to be able to work through that within myself and not take it personally ultimately, or turn off comments or just delete them or something like that. Right. So that is definitely there, just to be super honest. However, I think it's really, really important to be real. It's important to be real online because even as much as I'm real online, it's still only a snippet of my real life, right? So I do share vulnerably a lot of real stuff. The other day, I posted a question like, how soon after giving birth did you have sex? Right? So, like intimate stuff, and people are sharing with me in the DMs. But that doesn't mean that so people still look at me and see this like glorious everything's perfect, even though I share vulnerably. And my point is, you don't have to be vulnerable and like overshare, but being real online gives other people permission to be real in their own lives as well. So being real about changing my mind or being real about my age. I'm 49. He was born he was born 6 days after I turned 49. Now, that's not a big difference from 48. It's still old, right? But I was like, oh my God, I want to be 48 when I have him because 49 is so old. And then I'm like, oh, both is really old to have a baby. But also not. Like, I know people that have babies at 50 and into their early 50s. But my point is, it gives people permission to still want a baby when they're 45, to pursue, IVF, to not be skewed by society on all of these things, age and birth and pregnancy and inside the system, outside the system. Do you want this test or don't you want this test? The influence of Big Pharma. Like, I'm very, very outspoken about what I believe about Big Pharma. And I have a personal Instagram account where I'm not vocal about my beliefs about Big Pharma, because the people that I have on my personal Instagram account believe the opposite as me. And during COVID, I was treated really badly. I did not get the vaccine. I did not want it. I didn't believe in the bullshit that the government was trying to push on us and Big Pharma ultimately. And when I shared that with anybody in my real life, especially my husband's side, they ostracized me. They treated me really badly. So I don't share that publicly anymore. Although now things have calmed down and whatever. But so the point is, don't overshare. You don't need to be vulnerable to the point of like feeling uncomfortable, but being real is where it's at. Like be real as you want to be to whatever level that you feel comfortable.
Yeah. And I remember you did sharing that too in our last episode. And I appreciate that because you're right. People do, they wake up and they say, okay, like this person, oh my gosh, I feel like that too. And maybe you feel alone and now you don't because you know someone, has that same experience as you do. Now, I know you talked a lot about Big Pharma and you also talked a lot about IVF. Can you just share, at first we'll talk a little bit more about Big Pharma. For those who don't know what Big Pharma is, what the purpose of it is, why you're so heavily involved in the aftermath of Big Pharma and the regulations there. Can you just share a little bit about what you believe to be true and why you don't agree with Big Pharma and what is Big Pharma?
Yeah. So Big Pharma is like a catchy term basically for the pharmaceutical company who is out not to help us, but to make money off our sickness. And doctors are trained, like if you go down the rabbit hole of this, like, I mean, there's not enough time on this podcast to even go there, but if you follow the money, you will understand that this is true. So the modern medical system was created by the father of Big Pharma, which is the Rothschild family. And they decided that it would be good and it would be financially beneficial for them to create a system where people would pay for their medical things. And they made homeopathics and natural remedies sound quacky, but their medicines were advertised as being better. And over the years, and it's not that many years, I actually don't know how many years, but maybe 100, 150. But over the year, maybe more, but over the years, we have been brainwashed to believe that with medicine, doing stuff, like doing more stuff, like cutting things out, putting vaccines in, bloodletting, all that stuff that they used to do is better than leaving things alone or using nature. And so this has become an industry, and medical schools are founded on this philosophy of prescribe things, don't use natural stuff, go to an actual doctor. And they're all trained and funded by this original family. Anyways, I don't want to, it's too boring. People are probably getting lost in this. The point is, Big Pharma nowadays, Big Pharma funds medical schools, doesn't allow and allows whatever they want. It's very, very narrow. So when I went to midwifery school, even midwives that are trained in university, that are licensed, are actually trained by Big Pharma. And so when it came to learning about homeopathics or natural remedies or any of that stuff, I had to pay out of pocket extra and separate courses. Whereas the pharmaceutical knowledge was included in my university courses. That just goes to show you, right? So even midwives are trained by Big Pharma. And so there is a agenda to slot everyone into interventions and sickness so that Big Pharma can profit financially. And so that's what I'm against. I'm not against modern medicine because obviously I used IVF to get Isaac. And I'm not against, my birth story is that I ended up not having a home birth as I planned because I couldn't handle the pain for more than 24 hours. I was in excruciating labor for 24 hours. And I decided I wanted an epidural. I'm not against the modern advancements of medicine. I am just against the blanket use for everyone and slotting everyone like farm animals in to have all those interventions, including the COVID vaccine. Maybe the COVID vaccine was good for some people, but I didn't want it. And Big Pharma did not like me. And because of what Big Pharma had as an agenda, I was treated like a piece of shit in my community, in my country. I wasn't allowed to fly. Like, you know it. We all know what happened, right?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. And so, in Canada, we called it China because we were so, controlled. At least
Mm,
in the US, there was a lot more freedom and there were pockets of people and states, right? Different
yeah.
states with different beliefs that you were much more free. But here, no. And I didn't see my older kids for months. It was really scary and really horrible. So, anyways, I'm on to the agenda of Big Pharma. Big Pharma is in bed with the government. So, of course, the government is going to push for funding for hospitals, for funding for, more C-sections. Like everything is interconnected to the money piece that will make only a few people at the top a lot of money and make us sicker. So we'll leave that there.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate you going into that just a little bit deeper because I don't think a lot of people really understand the impact of Big Pharma. And I also don't think a lot of people really understand how it affects not just you, but it affects the next generation and the next generation. And it affects your entire bloodline because you're not truly understanding what it means to, again, tell your own story and decide for yourself which route you want to go instead of just allowing, it doesn't matter what anyone says, that I'm just going to do whatever because they said it, and not really taking that next step and digging a little bit deeper to say, okay, is this what's most beneficial for my family and what we're doing in this house?
Right.
Because that's what it is. That's what it's all about. And, I would love for you to touch a little bit for the sake of time, but would love for you to touch a little bit on just what that experience was to just go through IVF. What is IVF for those of you all who don't know, right? What that process looks like and how that really has benefited you in this period of time.
Yeah. So IVF is in vitro fertilization, which is reproductive technology, meaning getting help getting pregnant because just good old sex wasn't working. Although it was working, I was getting pregnant and I was having miscarriages based on what we think is the age of my eggs. So I don't share this publicly, but I'll share it here because it's a smaller community. But we ended up using an egg donor for him. So he's an egg donor baby, which
Oh,
means another woman gifted me her young eggs so that we could, make embryos with my husband's sperm and her eggs and put the embryo inside me. And then I gestated, I had the pregnancy and delivered him. So it's a bit controversial as well because whatever it's messing with nature, but again using Big Pharma to your advantage and being in full control lets you decide what you want to use and what you don't want to use. And I wanted another child so badly that I was willing to do that.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. This has been a pleasure. And as we just wrap up super quickly, can you just share with us, with the current business model that you have and your health and wellness business. Can you just share a little bit more about what that is and how people can connect and possibly work with you in that area?
Yeah. So you can definitely connect more with me on Instagram to follow along with my journey. But I am part of North America's biggest wellness company called the Wellness Box or Wellness Company. And we just help people put money into a company that you can really trust. They are not connected to Big Pharma at all. So it's like voting with your dollars. I joined the company because I was so disillusioned with the products in health food stores being all snatched up by Big Pharma companies like Procter and Gamble and Unilever, Coca-Cola, like all of the big giants. And I was like buying my deodorant from the health food store thinking it was like a small little company. And really I'm giving money to Jeff Bezos. I was like, oh, wow. And, so this is a wellness company. They have almost 500 products. And we just help families switch their stores, switch their products. That's it.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it. And if you all, again, want to continue to connect with Barbara, just make sure you hit her up on Instagram and follow her birthing journey. Queen, thank you so much for tuning in. It truly warms our heart that you're taking the time out of your day to connect with us. If you'd like to connect with our guests further, you can find their information located in the description section of this episode. And if you found this episode helpful, share with another queen, and don't forget to connect with the Holistic Sister Circle on Instagram and Facebook. And until next week, stay blessed. Mwah.